No, hi, Daron. Hi. Daron Yondem is a tech lead for application innovation at Microsoft, and his session is on finding the perfect spot for your containers. Enjoy, everyone.
Hey everyone, I'm going to try to make this quick, but that's an important topic as well. And our topic for today is essentially where do I put my containers? Like, hey, I have some app, I've containerized, and this way or the other. So, or maybe I simply have some containers, and I need somewhere to host it, right? And when I look at Azure, I see all of these different options. In the previous session, there was a lot of discussion about AKS, but that's not the only solution. If you go out there and look into do some research, you're going to see that we have a couple of options. And during the next 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to try to clarify like which direction to go based on your situation. Okay. So that's why I have the whiteboard in front of me. And for that, give me a second. There we go. So the first one that I'm going to start from is probably the most popular one is going to be app services. Oops, no, that's not the right one. Okay. So app services, the first option. I'm sure you have done something with app services. It's crazy easy to do a deployment to app services. You can do a zip deploy. You have your source code, you have your binaries, you just put it out there. It is able to scale. You can have, X amount of servers hosting your app. It's scalable. It does all of this magic. It's one of the most easiest services to use. And you can actually do a container-based deployment. So if you have a container, you can go in there, select the, whatever app service plan that you have, and you can do a container-based deployment. But here's a trick, at least for now. You have to have one container per app service. Okay, so an app service will be backed up by an app service plan. Plan is the big word in here. A single plan consists of multiple servers, right? And then you can have multiple app services hosted in there. But what's important is the connection between the app service and the container is usually one-on-one. You might have noticed that I said usually. Yes, you can do a multiple container deployment. There are workarounds, there are tips and tricks, but that's not the best way to go. Maybe you have a sidecar, okay, use the workaround, right? But when it comes to a solution that consists of multiple containers, right? You have, I don't know, 2 containers, 3 containers, 10 containers, and maybe more, not just your app. You have containers hosting your dependencies. You have containers hosting your database. You have containers hosting your Redis. You have all of that stuff. In that case, no, app services isn't the way to go. Okay. So if I would put into in a single sentence, if I have a monolith that is containerized, I can happily go to app services. I wouldn't worry about anything else. I have a monolith, it's containerized. I'm just using the containers as a deployment, technique, let's say, as a packaging way, right? App service is great. Put it, run it on 20, 30, whatever number of servers that you want. It's going to scale. It's going to help you out. You don't need spin up a VM and run, container runtime and, just to get your, containerized app running. But if you have multi-container, then no, that wouldn't be ideal, right? Because otherwise you're going to need to spin up multiple app services. We don't like that much unless you have maybe 2 or 3 containers, and you can definitely orchestrate that and get ease of use app services. But what I'm talking about is like applications that consist of 10, 20, 30 containers, and especially some of these containers, if they are hosting actually dependencies, like mentioned Redis and other stuff, maybe Elastic or whatever. So and the solution for that, to be honest, would be get the managed Redis cache service, right? I mean, it's easy to say. You might come back and say, hey, I have this, particular configuration that I have to do, and the managed service doesn't do that. If that's the case, obviously, you need more flexibility, and that makes sense. So this is the highest level solution that we have. Like, the easiest, this is the service where you put a lot of the responsibility into Microsoft's shoulders, right? So what else do we have? What if I wanted to step down a level? With that one, I mean, hey, I'm going to take more responsibility and I need more flexibility, right? What can I do? So then it's going to be Azure Container Apps. Okay, so interesting. So in this case, what I have is I can deploy a multi-container application. I have a lot of flexibility. And this actually runs on Kubernetes. But here's the deal. So obviously you might ask, what is the difference between, Kubernetes and Azure Container Apps? And let's go there. Let's answer that question. So, and here I have Azure Kubernetes service. Okay. First off, the way I want you to think about this is stepping down. What does that mean? I'm stepping down, I'm taking more responsibility, and I'm getting more flexibility in return. Okay? So that means when I go from app services to Azure Container Apps, I'm going to be responsible in terms of, hey, how do these containers communicate with each other? How are they going to scale separately? How will the dependency management happen and all that? And how are they going to, again, did I say how they're going to scale separately? All of that responsibility is going to be on you. But the major difference between going all the way down to Azure Kubernetes service is that you're not going to have access to Kubernetes itself, the Kubernetes APIs, and you're not going to be worried about that either. So when it comes to networking, right? Setting up the networking and making sure that all of your containers easily are able to talk to each other. All of that configuration that relates to Kubernetes, it's going to be much easier to do when you go into container apps. So unless you need direct access to the Kubernetes APIs, there's no reason to go there. Why would I take more responsibility if I don't need that flexibility? And I know flexibility sounds like, hey, that's nice, that's positive. Who doesn't like flexibility? If that means more responsibility, that means increased maintenance, increased effort in terms of maintaining the app, then I'm gonna, it's not free flexibility. That's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't come for free. It brings some accountability and responsibility with it. So I have to think, do I really want that or not? So let's turn the question around then. What would be a scenario where it would make really sense to go down that layer and get a Kubernetes, fully Azure Kubernetes service? So first off, like I said, hey, you need more flexibility. You're going to run your own stack, starting from, network traffic redirection to everything that you can imagine. Hey, I'm going to put my own software in there to do all of that. Okay. In that case, yes, you need more flexibility. Or maybe you have multiple solutions that you want to pool within a single node pool. So you don't just have one solution, you have tens of hundreds, hopefully not thousands. That would be painful. Anyway, so you have tens of solutions with tens of containers, and you want to orchestrate all of that in a single pool of hardware. In that case, yes, you need more power in terms of accessing that orchestration layer. So then, yes, you are going to fall back to Azure Kubernetes Service because it makes sense. It's going to help you do what you want to do. So you can imagine that this is a little bit of a middle ground. So app services that can only take one container, at least, ideally, let's say. And Azure Kubernetes Service where you can do whatever you want, pretty much, as long as you have a containerized app and you're fine with Kubernetes for the orchestration layer. So if you need something in the middle, you don't want to go full blown, and have, all of the worries of maintaining your Kubernetes environment. And by maintaining, I don't mean the master node. Again, that's taken care of by Microsoft. But, when a Kubernetes version changes and all of the internal orchestration, you have to do it yourself. It's something as simple as, hey, we want to do, deployment slots. We want to do A/B testing. If you're going to do it with Azure Kubernetes Service, you're going to decide what type of software you're going to use within your Kubernetes cluster to enable that functionality. When it comes to container apps, too, that's out of the box. That's a functionality that comes out of the box. So, okay, cool. So these are the three major options. Do we have anything else? Yes, we actually have. And that is this sneaky thing. I call it sneaky because I shouldn't call it sneaky. I should call it like, a fundamental building block. And by being a fundamental building block, the crazy flexible thing that I would say ACI. Okay. Azure Container Instances. So, what is it? Again, it's a fundamental building block. What does that mean? It doesn't do a lot. It just does one single thing, and it does it beautifully. It's crazy simple. You give a container image, it is going to host it for you. Okay. So how? Obviously, every time you give a container image, you're going to say like, hey, this is the hardware I need for this container image. This is the VM, essentially, that I need. This is the hardware I need to back up this container image. And that's it. As simple as that. So when it comes to scaling, you are going to need to do your own thing. Okay? When it comes to networking and all that, no. This is a fundamental building block. This isn't going to help you with anything other than, hey, I have a single container image and I want to run it. That's it. Okay? So if you need all of that orchestration, like, hey, I have multiple containers, I want to, make sure the traffic flows between them in an isolated, all that. No, that's then Azure Kubernetes Service or Azure Container Apps, or maybe App Services. Azure Container Instances, it's much more low level. Here's a little example. Azure Kubernetes Service itself can actually use ACI as a building block through the kubelet, which means when you need to scale a container, instead of scaling the node pool, you can actually jump out and bring in some ACI resources. So that's the Azure Kubernetes Service orchestrating things for you and using ACI as an underlying infrastructure enabler that is container capable. So, okay, besides this scenario, how would I, as an end user, for example, use ACI? I mean, first off, when I say end user, we're talking about developers here and IT people. But here's a scenario: you have a CI/CD pipeline, and you have this custom weird isn't the right word, but anyways, extraordinary image that you have to run with a lot of dependencies and stuff in it as part of your CI/CD pipeline. Usually it's the CI, right? In order to, do the whole thing, you'll have some custom software, custom frameworks, custom runtime, whatever, right? And you are looking for a place. So you don't need that place to live forever. You want to pay per the minute or whatever. And you build this container image because you think like it's going to be easy, like all of these dependencies and all that. I'm not going to go back to 1960s and build a VHT. So I built this container. We're using it, in our developer machines. So I need some place to put this container, and I only need to run it every time the CI pipeline kicks in. Okay, obviously a solution is to put that container into a Kubernetes cluster, but if you have a Kubernetes cluster already, maybe you reuse that cluster, or you kind of use the resources available there. But then again, you might not want to mix things up, and you might want to keep the this particular agent, whatever that is, separate from your Kubernetes cluster. If you don't have a Kubernetes cluster, then what are you going to do? Are you going to spin up a container app? No. You don't need that. Just put the container as an ACI. It's just a single command. It's a CLI, HTTP, whatever, right? However you want to communicate with Azure, you simply, tell that this is the image, this is the container image I want you to run, and this is the hardware I need. Get it up for the next 5 minutes, and then drop it. And that's all. So simply, I have a container I want to run. I don't want to touch anywhere else. Maybe I don't, or I don't want to. But, just one scenario, right? As part of your CI process. Or maybe something else. I don't know. Scheduled stuff that you want to run. It makes it really easy. But when it comes to running a full-blown application that is going to scale, with multiple containers and all that stuff, no. Don't do it with ACI. It's going to be too hard to orchestrate. You don't need that. I mean, there's already solutions to do that, such as, Kubernetes services or container apps, or, not with multiple containers, but single container app services, obviously. So there's all of the other solutions to be able to do that. Okay, so these are pretty much the big pieces that we have when it comes to, hey, I have a container and I'm trying to decide where to, or maybe multiple containers, and I'm trying to decide where to host it. Obviously, you can combine these options, right? Probably not for a single solution. That would be too complicated, maybe. It depends, I suppose. But keep in mind that you can combine these solutions, especially, I do see the combination of, like I mentioned, the ACI and Azure Kubernetes services through the vKubelet implementation. But there might be other, combinations as well. You can always mix and match. You don't have to stick with one. Okay, cool. Let me see if there are any questions. I believe we don't have any, but I'm going to double check that. Give me a moment. Okay, we don't have any questions. So that's then just beautiful, because that's pretty much it. And it looks like I have just finished in time. I didn't need that extension. Thank you very much for being with us. If you end up having any questions, if they're watching this video as a on-demand recording, you can see my LinkedIn profile down there. Feel free to reach out, send me a DM whenever a question comes up. I'm on Twitter as well. I will be more than happy to answer your questions. With that, that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much, Daron.